Look around, and what do you see? There are birds, there are trees, there are people who are still having difficulties in speaking English the right way. Nowadays, English has become one of the most spoken languages in the world, and many people seek to learn it in any way they can. Whether it be from academic institutions such as schools, courses, camps, or just plainly from various medias, such as TV, movies, video games, and etc. There is this sheer sense of joy when one has successfully managed to learn English, because this way one has felt that he has become a part that is greater and bigger than himself. Understanding the grammars and vocabularies are an achievement in itself, but it is not uncommon that people would still have more troubles in conveying English the way they should than successfully learning other materials in the English studies. This includes pronunciation methods and manners of speaking, and many non-native people have not yet figured this one out. But why is that? How come this part has been a large issue these days that plagues so many? It would be embarrassing if one should speak English not in the correct way when face to face with, say, the natives. Take for example the Javanese folks. How many times have you seen them speaking in their own dialects instead of the proper English one? That right there could be a big problem for you Javanese folks out there. Confusion and misinterpretation is sure to happen in these type of situations. Hi, I'm Iqbal from English Studies 2018, and along with my friends Janis and Umar, we are about to try and break down everything about the Javanese English conveyance problems from the phonetics and phonology standpoint. And at the end of it all, we'll provide a handful of ways on how to try and overcome these problems for the better. So sit back and enjoy.
Let's start off by discussing about accents. By definition, an accent is a manner of pronunciation peculiar to a particular individual, location, or nation. An accent may be identified with the locality in which its speakers reside, the socioeconomic status of its speakers, their ethnicity, their case of social class, or influence from the first language. An accent that a speaker possesses will affect the speaker's pronunciation of words in either their native languages or foreign languages. It changes how the syllables of a word are said or divided, how they pronounce different vowels and consonants, how they use stress in words, and how their voice sounds like, leading to a very distinct way of speaking that is unique to a certain group. So how do people get their accents? Well, an accent is usually acquired by speakers by observing how people around them in their native locale speak, such as friends or family. They will then imitate how different words are pronounced in their native language and apply how these words are spoken in their daily life. When introduced with a new language, speakers have a tendency to insert how they pronounce their native language into the pronunciation of these foreign words, resulting in a very unique way of speaking that is unique to their birth group. For example, Russian or German accented English, which sound very different compared to typical English pronunciation. In some cases, people who learn about both American and British English have a tendency to combine different pronunciations from both dialects into their English speech, adding another degree to variety. Accents do often cause problems, especially among English speakers. Due to how differently a word is pronounced in a language by a foreigner with an accent compared to native speakers, it might cause miscommunication between two different people who speak the same language but with differing accents. Also, people who speak with accents are often perceived to be less believable. Since the way they speak is hard to understand, it causes people to not believe what they are saying, and may interpret what they say as something else entirely. For example, a simple question by a foreigner could be perceived as a threat by a local because of a difference in intonation. The severity of an accent usually affects how believable a speaker is perceived.
Now let's take a look at one of the examples of when a Javanese person fails to speak in a proper English manner. This comes from our own beloved President Joko Widodo while he was giving a speech.
And unfortunately, along the way, he has made some hiccups here and there. Let us pick apart some of these pronunciation mistakes and try to correct them as best as possible. Let's begin.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Right off the bat, he falsely pronounced the word gentleman. Here, vowel of the man part is not spoken as eh, but instead with schwa. So it becomes gentleman instead of gentleman.
I would hereby like to officially nominate as the invention of the century.
Century. The letter T in the middle of century is supposed to be pronounced with the consonant ch instead of stressing t. So it becomes century instead of century.
The selfie. The selfie has changed the world. It has now evolved into the Wi-Fi.
This is a major mistake that most people still make nowadays. The word Wi-Fi is to be pronounced Wi-Fi instead of Wi-Fi. The vowels of I in this word are pronounced I instead of E.
And the flop. Here is a park in Indonesia. This in Kalibiru near Yogyakarta in Indonesia, where people are waiting in line.
Last but not least, waiting. Here, Mr. Jokowi missed a long vowel of A, and instead he said it as A. It makes it sound more like waiting rather than waiting.
For hours, for the chance to take the perfect selfie.
As we can see, consonants are not the only victims of pronunciation mishap. In Mr. Jokowi's case, vowels are no exception. This could happen to everyone else out there too. So next time, let's try to be mindful of the way we speak English. Because even the country's #1 man still has a lot to learn. We still love you, Mr. Jokowi. Never fear, dear sir.
Ambil sepedanya.
Okay, now that we have established what accent is and how some people have one, I want to talk about our main topic. Why do people with thick Japanese accent have difficulty in speaking English? Right. First of all, people with thick Japanese accent have a peculiar way of speaking. But in this video, we will focus on how they pronounce their voice plosive consonants, which are b, d, and g. People with thick Japanese accent tend to emphasize their voice plosive consonants, even when they speak Bahasa. For example, these are how pronounced the voice plosive consonants can be in Bahasa. Bola, coba, gugat, dadu. Can you hear how explosive they are? It sounds like I stressed each voice plosive consonant because the sounds doesn't emphasize to them. And if I try to speak only the syllables with voice plosive consonants, bo, bola, ba, coba, gu, gat, gugat, da, du, dadu. You can even hear there's like a little H, a little bit of air that escapes that makes it sound like doesn't sound. The mouth shape also tends to be round, like this. Ba, da, gu. Now, after I demonstrated with Bahasa, we will now move on to how this accent influenced Japanese in speaking English. Are these consonants also become aspirated in English? Does stress influence them? Let's find out. The first consonant is voiced by labial plosive, b. The first word has two b sound in it, one in stressed initial position and the second one is an unstressed medial position. The first word is baby, baby. The next word has an unstressed b in initial position, which is bed, Next one has a stressed b in medial position, which is about, about. The last one has a b in final position, which is cap, cap. Okay, let's move on to the next consonant, which is d, voiced alveolar plosive. The first word has a stressed d in initial position, which is digit, digit. The next word has an unstressed d in initial position, do, do. Next one has a stressed d in medial position, idea, idea. Next word has an unstressed d in medial position, edit, edit. The last one has a d in final position, at, at. Finally, the last consonant is g, voiced velar plosive. The first word has a stressed g in initial position, which is gossip, gossip. The next word has an unstressed g in initial position, goose, goose. Next one has a stressed g in medial position, regain, regain. Next word has an unstressed g in medial position, beggar, beggar. The last one has a g in final position, hug, hug. Did you find any problem? Well, in the next part, my friend Umar will explain to you about the problems with how I speak these words and how these consonants are supposed to sound like in English.
Like what we discussed earlier in the video, the problem lies in plosive consonants, specifically the voiced ones, which consist of the sounds b, d, and g. In English, these plosives each have a different place of articulation, with b being bilabial since the lips are pressed together, d being alveolar since the tongue is pressed against the alveolar ridge, and finally g is velar since the back of the tongue presses against the area where the hard palate ends and the soft palate begins. These consonants are also pronounced differently depending on their position in a word, namely the initial, medial, or final position. If a proficient English speaker pronounces these consonants in the initial position very slowly and carefully, there may be voicing during the entire compression phase, which is the second phase of plosive production where the compressed air is stopped from escaping, while in rapid speech there may not be any voicing at all, with the release followed by weak plosive, which happens at about the same time as or shortly after the voicing of the consonant. Also of note is how these consonants cannot be preceded by another consonant initial position. In the medial position, the pronunciation of b, d, and g depends to some extent on whether the syllables preceding or following the plosive are stressed, so we can say that the medial plosives may have the same characteristics as initial or final plosives. In the final position, the sounds b, d, and g normally have little voicing, which takes place at the compression phase, with the plosion following the release of b, d, and g being very weak and often inaudible. Since we are discussing about the Javanese accent, let's integrate this matter into that. People with a thick Javanese accent have a tendency to aspirate their plosive voice consonants. In Bahasa, these happen at the beginning of a word or the initial position, or in between other sounds, or the medial position. If the consonant is at the end of a word, the plosion of b, d, and g is very weak, and often sounds like their voiceless plosive counterparts, which are p, d, and k. For example, adab, abat, and gudak. In these examples, you can hear how weak the consonants in the final positions are compared to the consonants in the initial and medial positions. In phonology, stress is defined as a relative emphasis or prominence given to a certain syllable in a word, or to a certain word in a phrase or sentence. This emphasis is typically caused by such properties as increased loudness and vowel length, full articulation of the vowel, and changes in pitch. In Bahasa Indonesia and in turn Javanese, the stressing of syllables do not apply as many words have the same meaning no matter which syllable the stress is placed at, compared to English plosives, where the stressing of a syllable dictates what a word means. A unique exception to this is in Javanese phonetics, particularly regarding the consonant g, where the stress of this consonant in the medial position is constant and is very prominent, which leads to some English words having the wrong stress, such as the word beggar. If a person with a thick Javanese accent were to pronounce this word, They could stress both the b and the g consonants with equal emphasis. By comparison, in English phonetics, when a word can be stressed on two different syllables, stress placement determines the part of speech of the word, whether it is a verb or a noun.
Okay, now that we know how to voice b, d, g correctly, all of you who have thick Japanese accent must be wondering, well, how do I do that? Do I have to enroll in English courses or train with speech coaches? No. In fact, you don't even have to spend any money to make your accent less thick. Here's a few easy tips that anyone can follow. First of all, listen well to English a lot. It can be songs, podcasts, radio, or audiobooks. You can even watch videos about anything like gameplay, video blogs, reviews, movies, cartoons, news. It doesn't have to be an educational video about English. Anything in English is fair game. Pay attention on how they talk, including the stress, the intonation, well, everything. Second of all, practice. Practice by speaking English a lot. I understand that many people with accent are not that confident in speaking English, and that's okay. That's why I'm going to teach you my own personal method in how to lessen your accent. Before you sleep, try to sound out the consonant b, d, g. We've already known that people with thick Japanese accent have tendencies to 1. Stress them even though it's unnecessary. 2. Aspirate them even though they should not be aspirated. And 3. Round their mouth even though, once again, it's not necessary. Now that you know your problem, mind them and start correcting how you sound them. To make these consonants not as aspirated, try to shape your mouth into something of a line, like this. B, 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 b. Also, try not to let out too much air. D, 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 d. Remember not to bounce or stress these consonants, such as like this. G, 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 g. Keep it slow, don't rush it. Feel the shape of your mouth, the air that comes out, and also the bounce or the emphasis. Now that you know your problem, try doing this exercise right before you sleep every time. When you lie in bed, try to sound these consonants until you think you can get them right. It works wonder for me. Now, I'll say those problematic words with accent first, and then try to say them with keeping those tips in mind. Baby, baby. Bed, bed. About, about. Digit, digit. Do, do. Idea, idea. Addict, addict. Gossip, gossip. Goose, goose. Decade, decade. Is there any difference? Well, maybe not at first, but eventually, with patience and lots of practice, your accent will become thinner.
So, what have we learned today? I'm sure all those minutes learning about phonetics and phonology have not made your head all going on spinning and like that. But at least you've gained some knowledge about how Javanese speak in English and how they might overcome them. To conclude all of this, let me just recap everything that we've learned so far today.
Accents are everywhere, and many people from all sorts of background have them in their own form. They've been around from early on in people's life, and were generally introduced by the society that's closest to them, such as family. Accents become a major factor in influencing the way people speak. In Javanese accent, the plosives B, D, G are spoken with so much stress that it impacts English pronunciations on many circumstances. Both consonants and vowels are prone to pronunciation mistakes by Javanese people. To overcome the problem, try viewing and listening to various English-based medias. While at it, keep practicing speaking correct English, so that in time you will get used to speak properly.
So that's it for today's video. I hope you found this video to be useful and enjoyable. We would like to express our deepest gratitude to Miss Wiwin for guiding us throughout this whole semester and teaching us all about phonetics and phonology like a pro. Okay, so me and my friend Janis, also Umar, we would like to say thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time.